We need to let someone know that Domenico is dead and we're all okay. We've got to call home. They'll have seen what's happened on TV and will be thinking the worst.
We said, let's go ring on doorbells. There'll be someone who understands us. But no one answered the door to us.
We couldn't call home, so we headed back to the car. But once there, we realized that we didn't have the keys. Who had the car keys? Domenico did, of course, in his pocket. So I waited there by the car, and Danilo and Armando went back.
I couldn't bring myself to go back in, so my brother went, but the police stopped him and told him in their language that he couldn't go in. My brother tried to explain. Keys, car keys. My brother went in, got the keys. I don't know if he kissed Domenico goodbye. He came out with the keys, and then we headed back to the car. They were loading the dead to take them to the morgue.
And so, the ragazzis left for Italy. And still, at the stadium, no decision had been taken, and all logic seemed to have disappeared. It was chaos. Nearly 2 hours after the deaths, the meeting in the VIP hall was still going on.
Then suddenly that Italian minister said in a very loud voice, in French, "But who's running this show? Who's in charge?" Total silence. Then the mayor, who was standing next to me, turned around and pointed to me, saying, "The general." Immediately I told them the game must go ahead. And I added, "You'll have to give me the time to bring in extra troops." They agreed. And so the game went ahead.
It was seen as safer to play than to evacuate. At last a decision had been made, or so it appeared. The Juventus players had been waiting in the dressing room for what seemed like ages, when manager Morini was asked to go to the meeting and find out what was happening.
I arrived and heard our president Boniperti starting to speak. Gentlemen, given what's happened, that people have died, we Juventus are not willing to play. We can't play after what has happened. So I'm taking my team and we're leaving.
In a situation like that, instinct takes over. You think, we just can't play, we should postpone. It's not an easy decision to make.
The Italians in the meeting never really agreed to go ahead with the game, but the others insisted. The final had to be played, for security reasons.
So
President Boniperti said, "Okay, if that's what you want to do, we'll play. But is it a real game? Will it count?" And the Liverpool people said, "If we play, we want it to be for real." And the heads of UEFA said, "Yes, whatever the result is, it counts."
I got the impression that the two club presidents, how can I say this, were more concerned with the match result, with who was going to win, than with the tragedy.
Finally, it was decided that the UEFA delegate should go and inform the players that a serious incident had taken place. People had been wounded, but should not tell them that people had died, because many players would refuse to play if they knew that. As the French say, it was a case of raison d'état, reasons of state. The security of the majority took precedence over the personal views of the few.
At 20-10, 2 hours and 10 minutes after the tragedy, the two team captains were asked to talk to the fans, and then the game could go ahead. The speeches didn't make much of an impression. Guido de Vint of the Belgian FA escorted the Liverpool captain Phil Neal to the tannoy.
I left the dressing room with the Liverpool captain. He didn't know anything, he hadn't seen anything, he'd been shut in all evening. We went outside and he was overwhelmed. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was a battlefield. He thought there was a war going on. He was so scared that he asked if he could hold my hand.
It was hoped that watching the final would channel the fans' excess energy, especially that of the Italian hardcore fans who were still completely out of control. Back in Italy, Mrs. Martelli kept watching television in the hope of recognising her son somewhere in the crowd. Once it had been decided to play the final, broadcasters had a new dilemma of whether or not to show it. Most did. German television didn't.
Das ZDF hat sich entschieden, dieses Spiel nicht zu übertragen. Ein Spiel, das, so glaube ich, nur noch einen einzigen Zweck hat, nicht mehr einen Europacup auszuspielen, sondern eine neue schlimme Massenhysterie zu verhindern, die Stimmung, so gut es geht, zu beschwichtigen.
At 9:45, 2 hours and 15 minutes after the collapse of the wall, the two teams came back onto the pitch.
I think if you're brought up in the right way and the chief of police says, actually, you have to do this, I think, 99% of the public go, right, we have to do this. I think if we'd been a bit stronger and said, well, actually, no. But if he's saying we've got to play and Juventus are saying they're going to play, then we should play. But I think now you kind of think, well, actually, hold on a minute, that was complete rubbish. We should have just, abandoned the game and just gone home.
Yeah, you could have said that. I could have said that I didn't want to play. But then in the consequences, what would have happened to me if that had happened? You are owned by them, so therefore, whatever they say, you have to abide by. In today's standards, I could have just said, no, I don't want to play. The youngster who was sitting on the bench at the time, he would have played.
Some of the players didn't want to play, and so Trapattoni and I had to sort of psych them up. We said, look, they're making us play, so we'll play to preserve the honour of the people who have died, to give them a good send-off. They're forcing us to play. We've got to play. Like when there are soldiers in the trenches with bombs falling on them and people being killed, and they have to fight on regardless.
I was very angry, a coiled spring. Ironically, I played the game of my life, maybe because I was so angry and focused. I wanted to prove something to the fans, to win for them. Clearly, if you're going to play, you play to the death, not for the cup itself, but for those fans who died so pointlessly. At least, if they were up in heaven, they would have seen the game.